If you think you're a kitchen whiz, just wait till you see the tasty treats being created by the best cooks in the natural world. We're counting down the top 10 most extreme gourmets in the animal kingdom to find out just who prepares the most complicated cuisine. Can you guess who's coming to dinner when gourmets are taken to the most extreme? Earth is a planet of extremes. Extreme places and extreme animals. But some animals are more extreme than others. Join us as we count down to find the most unusual, the most extraordinary, the most extreme. Once upon a time, our ancestors were like most animals. They found food and ate it. But then they discovered fire. Harnessing fire opened up a whole hamper of new ingredients to our hungry ancestors. Cooking food makes it easier to digest, safer to store, and can break down toxins, which is why today human gourmets can feast on such a wide variety of dishes. And while humans are the only creatures on Earth that use fire to cook, there are animals that have found other ways to prepare surprisingly complicated dishes. Our story begins in the rivers of Africa, home to the least sophisticated chef in the countdown. It uses a very simple recipe, but it's brutally effective. It pays to keep out of the kitchen when the Nile crocodile is looking for ingredients. For crocodiles, catching food is no problem. Their 60 cone-shaped teeth are driven into the flesh with the force of a sledgehammer. But those teeth and jaws are useless for chewing. That's why they've come up with a unique way of preparing their meal for swallowing. It's called the death roll. They bite down hard and then violently twist their body to tear off large chunks. This simple approach to food preparation is why these high-torque blenders are number 10 in the countdown. A quick twist, perhaps followed by some pounding on the riverbank, is enough to get food down the throat. After all, you don't need to spend hours in the kitchen when your stomach is the most acidic of any vertebrate. Crocs can digest even the toughest bones and hooves. The crocodile's recipe for success is simply rip, shred, and enjoy. However, as our countdown continues, we'll meet animals that take a much more sophisticated approach to food preparation. Our next contender is the northernmost monkey in the world, the Japanese macaque. Back in 1953, its food preparation techniques shocked the scientific community. And it was all thanks to one 18-month-old female who was a particularly gifted chef. Her name was Emo. Researchers had been luring her troop out into the open by emptying bags of sweet potatoes onto the beach. Since nobody likes chewing on sand, the monkeys would painstakingly brush it off with their paws. And then one day, Emo discovered it was so much easier to wash the potato in water. Soon, the whole troop was following her lead. And then, Emo discovered that a potato tasted better if seasoned with a little salt from the sea. So between bites, she'd dip it in the water. Emo started a culinary tradition that continues to this day. And that's why the Japanese macaque is number 9 in the countdown. If only some humans put as much effort into preparing their food. Back in the 50s, only 12% of American mothers had a career outside the home. That left lots of time to spend in the kitchen preparing a hearty home-cooked meal. Things are very different today. With more than 70% of American women in paid employment, they've moved out of the kitchen and into fast food. Every day in America alone, people eat 15 million burgers, 7 million pizzas, and 12 million liters of ice cream. This steady diet of processed food has taken a hefty toll on the nation's health. Back in 1971, 14.5% of the population was clinically obese. But now, that number has more than doubled. Perhaps we should take a cue from these gourmet monkeys. By spending a little longer preparing our own food, not only would things taste better, but they'd be better for our health. Maybe it could be called the monkey see, monkey do diet. So far, we've seen mighty meat rippers and savvy spud dippers. But what do an Iroquois Indian, a twig, and a squirrel have in common? And later, you just won't believe your eyes when we serve up a real square meal. Our countdown of extreme gourmets continues in the forests of North America, where for centuries we've been turning tree sap into maple syrup. It takes a lot of energy to boil off the water and concentrate the sugars. But we're not the only things in the forest that have a sweet tooth. Hopping in to number 8 in the countdown is the red squirrel. For most of the year, these little rodents feed on pine cones and nuts. It's a diet that doesn't require a great deal of culinary skill. Simply find a nut and start chewing using their built-in nut crackers. Each year, their incisor teeth grow nearly 15 centimeters to cope with the constant grinding. In just 1 year, a single squirrel can eat 20,000 pine cones. But in winter, when its supply of nuts runs low, the squirrel starts preparing a different meal. It chews on the bark of trees like the sugar maple. But it doesn't drink the oozing juice straight away. It waits for water in the sap to evaporate in the winter sunlight. This raises the sugar content from 2 to 55%. The red squirrel is number 8 in the countdown because it makes its very own maple syrup to provide an energy boost in an otherwise lean time of year. The discovery of this survival strategy dates back to an Iroquois Indian myth. It's said that a young man watched a squirrel run up a maple tree and bite off a twig. When the sap oozed out, the squirrel licked it up. When the man tried the same trick, a new sugary food source was introduced to the human diet. So next time you're spreading maple syrup on your pancakes, spare a thought for the red squirrel. It's one gourmet that went out on a limb for a truly great meal. For our last 2 contenders, sugar and spice make a gourmet meal nice. But coming up, we'll discover that it's not all sweetness and light when a dinner date turns deadly. And later, we'll meet an animal that comes out swinging when it takes on the toughest egg in the world. The next contender in our countdown of extreme gourmets loves an omelet, especially when it's made from the largest eggs on the planet. An ostrich egg contains the equivalent of 24 chicken eggs. The only trouble is that it's got one of the toughest shells in the world, which poses a big problem for the animal flying in to number 7 in the countdown, the Egyptian vulture. The smallest of all the Old World vultures, its relatively weak beak and claws could never break an eggshell that's strong enough to support the weight of a human. So instead, it uses its brain. All it has to do is find a suitable rock to get cracking. A vulture can wander over 40 meters in search of the perfect rock. It's always shaped like an egg, which suggests that once, vultures picked up and dropped small eggs to crack them open. Then one day, a culinary genius must have picked up an egg-shaped rock, dropped it onto an ostrich egg, and been rewarded with an instant omelet. While you can easily imagine a vulture confusing an egg for a stone, in Japan today, it's becoming increasingly difficult to recognize a watermelon. Square watermelons were developed in the 1980s by growers trying to corner the market. Costing up to 3 times the price of a normal melon, it's mainly the wealthy and fashion-conscious of Japan's big cities that are buying these cuboid or even pyramid-shaped fruit. For years, consumers had struggled to fit the large round fruit in their refrigerators. So, a farmer came up with the idea of growing the melons in glass boxes. The fruit naturally assumed the same shape, resulting in watermelons that could be more efficiently packed and stored. So far, nobody's come up with a way of making square eggs, much to the relief of Egyptian vultures and ostriches. By working out how to use a rock to scramble eggs, the vulture has become part of a small select group of animals that have learned how to use tools. Researchers studying hand-reared vultures have found that the stone-throwing behavior is instinctive, not learned. Even so, it takes practice to become a master omelet maker. However, even the most skilled Egyptian vulture is just an amateur at using kitchen utensils compared to our next contender. The world is full of bloodthirsty predators, but one of the most gruesome of them all is a small songbird that thinks it's an eagle. Meet the shrike. What it lacks in size and strength, it makes up in attitude. It has to pound its prey to death because its delicate feet are definitely not the powerful talons of an eagle. In fact, they're so weak that it can't hold on to its food and eat at the same time. So instead, the shrike makes a lizard kebab. The shrike is number 6 in the countdown because it uses thorns as a knife and fork. The skewers hold the meal as this unlikely predator tears it apart. Another shrike has found that impaling its prey serves a different purpose, especially when you're eating a lubber grasshopper. Lubber means big, clumsy fellow, which is why this large, slow-moving bug makes up for its lack of agility with a nasty chemical weapon. When threatened, it secretes a funky fluid that's toxic to birds and reptiles. And what's more, it smells revolting. Even shrikes find the lubber grasshopper's poison disgusting. However, a couple of days on a skewer roasting in the sun appears to break down the toxins, and when the shrike returns, it can feast in safety. Perhaps some humans could learn something from the shrike, especially when eating peppers. They contain a chemical called capsaicin, which produces the burning sensation.
I'm crying because it's so hot.
Sorry, I think that was too hot for me.
Capsaicin is produced by pepper plants as a deterrent against herbivores, although some human gourmets love it as a way of spicing up their food, especially here in Thailand, where these guys have just 12 minutes to see who can eat the most Thai green chilies. How would you like to chew your way through peppers that are estimated to be 20 times hotter than a jalapeno? The good news is that peppers don't actually cause a chemical burn. They only cause the sensation of one, because capsaicin interacts with our sensory neurons, fooling our brain into thinking that we're on fire. There's no doubt that capsaicin works well on mammalian herbivores, including these guys with their asbestos mouths. Strangely enough, it has no effect on birds. mainly because they're the animals responsible for spreading the pepper plant's seeds. But the shrike isn't interested in using poisonous plants to spice up its diet. It's happy to add a little flavor simply by leaving its meal to stew in the sun for a few hours. This is one gourmet with truly rotten taste. When it comes to using kitchen utensils, our last two contenders are no bird brains. And you don't have to be a genius to work out that at this restaurant, things are going to get messy when the blinds start leading the blind. And later, we'll meet some chefs who dine exclusively on a funky fungus. The next contender in our countdown of extreme gourmets is a male that knows that the best way to impress a date is to prepare a romantic meal. To pop the cork of a female nursery web spider, a male has to be good in the kitchen. He begins by catching a fly, and then covers the raw ingredients in silk, the spider equivalent of cling film. Next, he gets to work injecting powerful digestive enzymes that turn flesh into soup. Then, it's time to go a-courtin'. A scary prospect when your mate can be twice your size. The nursery web spider is number 5 in the countdown, because the male must take great care in preparing the meal that he presents to a potential mate. Until recently, it was thought that if the female didn't receive an appetizer, she'd turn the male into the main course. However, research has shown that it's the meal that entices the female to mate. And what's more, the size of the food parcel is related to how long the female will spend with the male. It seems that more eggs will be fertilized by more generous males bringing larger gifts. But spiders are not the only gourmets that enjoy insect delicacies. In Thailand, the bug business is booming. An estimated 2,000 species of invertebrates are consumed around the world. And people don't just eat bugs, they relish them as delicacies.
Needs the soy sauce though, I think.
Insects often contain more protein, fat, and carbohydrates than equal amounts of beef or fish. So it's no wonder that each year in Thailand alone, the edible insect industry is worth an estimated $140 million. And as the world's population increases and farmland shrinks, some nutritionists predict cricket farms like this will be popping up everywhere. And while the Western world hasn't yet caught this gourmet bug, don't be surprised if one day soon, these tasty treats will be coming to a supermarket near you.
Is that good?
At least we don't have the same problems as a nursery web spider. It needs to keep its 8 eyes peeled because occasionally the bugs bite back. Burrowing in to number 4 in the countdown is a small Scottish beetle. It may look like any other insect, but when it comes to hygienic food preparation, this bug breaks all the rules. Even its choice of food is disgusting, because it will only eat the dead bodies of small birds and mammals. When a pair of beetles get together on a carcass, they become nature's undertakers, which is why they're called burying beetles. It only takes them an hour to move the corpse down into the crypt. And then they prepare the body for dinner. First, they roll it into a ball and pluck off all the fur. Then the beetles cover it with a liberal coating of spit and anal secretions. It sounds disgusting, but the fluids actually contain antibiotic agents that help slow down the rotting process and keep the carcass free from bacteria and fungi. Burying beetles are number 4 in the countdown because in little more than 12 hours, they can transform a carcass 200 times their own weight into nothing more than a giant meatball. It becomes both a gourmet meal and a nursery for up to 30 baby beetles that hatch from eggs laid by the female. Burying beetles may have a disgusting diet, but they are one of the few insects on the planet that actually raise a family. A little regurgitated mouse carcass goes a long way for a baby burying beetle. By burying their food underground, the beetles can feast in complete privacy. It probably helps that in the complete darkness, they don't have to see what they're eating, which can make for an interesting dining experience for some intrepid human gourmets.
Hey guys, how are you guys doing tonight?
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to Opaque. It's a most unusual restaurant in Los Angeles, where you order your food in the lobby.
Okay, perfect. So we have 4 of them. Chardonnays. All right, perfect. All right, guys.
Hi.
May I introduce Beatrice to you? She's your server, not only your server tonight, she's also your guide. Like, she knows her way around. She has been especially trained to know exactly where she's going. So if you have any questions, ask her.
And most importantly, Beatrice is virtually blind.
Her shoulder, do the same thing. Just try to stay close and don't let go. And Beatrice is just gonna walk you in. Any questions, she's the law, okay?
It's time for the diners to find their table and for the cameras to switch to infrared.
All right, guys, have a nice meal. I'll talk to you later.
Opaque serves dinner in the dark.
You guys stick together, okay? Yeah, I don't want to lose you guys. Keep together. Okay, we're gonna make a turn right here. We'll take left. Keep following.
This is like a haunted house.
Right now, we're gonna make a right here, okay? Okay, you guys, I need you guys to stay connected. We're approaching the table.
I wonder how big the room is.
Here's yeah, keep connected. Okay, this is your chair. And in front of you, right there.
Is this
This is your seat.
Beatrice?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got you.
Okay.
Okay, guys.
Table, okay.
Here's your chair.
Thank you.
I feel like I can already hear better.
And you,
Oh, okay, sweet.
there you go.
Feel my fork
It
and my...
smells so good in here.
Patrice navigates using the sound of her feet on the ridged mat and is used to life in the dark. But for the diners, it opens up a whole new sensory experience.
You are Chris. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, I got your food, Chris. Your salad is here. It's gonna be right in front of you.
Okay. Oh, that's crazy.
It's right in front of you.
I'm trying to memorize
Take
mine.
this away.
I put it just to the left.
Yeah, I gotta figure out a plan.
Chris, I need your hand. I need you to know where your wine glass is
Okay.
at.
Thanks.
About 3/4 of our perceptions of the world around us come through our eyes. So, by removing our sight, we have to rely on other ways of sensing our environment.
Definitely tangy. Tang.
Everything's so, all of our senses, like all of my senses, my taste buds are just standing out so much.
I probably got dressing all over my face.
Hey, Chris, you think I could get this salad in your mouth?
Try it. Go for it. Just don't spill it on me. Keep my mouth open.
Where's your mouth?
I'm gonna shut my eyes. Here you go.
It's a really good bite. It was a good-
Sometimes it can be hard to know when you've finished your meal.
Okay, let me try. Let me some for you.
Can't really figure out if there's anything else on the plate.
Are you gonna be sorry?
No.
Right. Did you get it?
Alright, is there smooching? I just heard some smooching going on.
Yeah.
This may be the perfect place for a blind date. It's certainly far more romantic than eating with a burying beetle. But if you thought dining in a mouse meatball was disgusting, things just keep getting worse. If there isn't enough food to go around, the adults solve the problem by eating their children. It may seem cruel, but this act of cannibalism ensures that the remaining brood will have enough food to complete their development. Fortunately, these are the only animals in the countdown that turn their darlings into dessert. If bug soup and mouse meatballs don't whet your appetite, just wait till you get a whiff of the world's most expensive beverage. And later, you may find it a stretch to swallow a real dog's breakfast. The next contender in our countdown of extreme gourmets orders its salad to go. It's easy to see how the leafcutter ant gets its name. A colony of foraging workers can strip a tree of leaves overnight. It seems like an awful lot of work just to collect something they can't eat. Leafcutter ants can't digest leaves. That's why they've built one of the most highly organized kitchens in the animal kingdom. They're number 3 in the countdown because they use a gourmet assembly line to turn leaves into a meal fit for an ant. Inside the nest chamber, the foraging ants hand over the raw ingredients to smaller workers. Their job is to prepare the leaves by chewing them into a fine mulch, and then adding a secret blend of herbs and spices that includes saliva and ant poop. Different workers collect these pellets of mulch and turn them into a most unusual garden. A white spongy fungus grows on the mixture of leaf and excrement. It's this fungus that's the food for the whole leafcutter colony. Strangely enough, some humans are also interested in a gourmet treat that comes from an animal's bottom. These droppings belong to a relative of the mongoose called a palm civet. It loves eating the reddest, ripest cherries of coffee plants found in Southeast Asian plantations. But the civet's no pest. In fact, it helps to produce the rarest and most expensive beverage in the world. Workers search for civet droppings so they can collect the beans. Some say that the journey through the civet's intestines chemically alters the coffee beans. The digestive juices leach out many of the proteins that give coffee a bitter taste. Called Kopi Luwak, civet coffee is said to make a smoother, better-tasting brew that's good to the last dropping. Some people will pay $50 a cup.
Yes, there's an air about hot coffee that's hard to resist. Full-bodied, refreshing hot coffee makes any time a pleasant interlude. Won't you have some now?
No wonder coffee gourmets are saying to the civet, bottoms up. Leafcutter ants may not be full of beans, but their droppings are even more valuable for the survival of the colony. They're a vital part of the recipe that allows these extreme gourmets to turn leaves into food. And while eating a fungus that grows on feces may not be everybody's idea of a good meal, our next contender isn't so fussy. It would eat the fungus, the feces, and anything else it can get its paws on. Our next contender has long had a reputation as one of the world's craftiest killers. But one fox is also a dedicated gourmet. That's because when you live high above the Arctic Circle, you have to be clever with food if you're going to survive through the winter. Many small mammals avoid the big freeze by hibernating, but not the animal sneaking in to number 2 in the countdown, the Arctic fox. No bigger than a house cat, it has a relatively small stomach, and it doesn't lay down huge layers of fat as an energy store. It survives by taking extra food to go. And to stop other animals stealing its meal, it buries it. Arctic foxes have hundreds of these secret pantries scattered across the 50 square kilometers of their territory. They regularly return to inspect their cache of emergency food supplies. In this frozen wilderness, it takes a good memory and a keen sense of smell to find, store, and inspect the food supplies needed to survive the winter. The only good thing about living in a huge deep freeze is that the food you bury will keep for months, assuming you have strong enough jaws to cope with a steak popsicle. But don't go thinking that the Arctic fox just buries other animals' leftovers. It's number 2 in the countdown because in times of plenty, it prepares an underground smorgasbord, especially if it knows where seabirds nest. Researchers recently unearthed a fox cache that contained 38 birds, 4 rabbits, and about a dozen eggs. That's a veritable feast for an Arctic fox, but it's nothing compared to the food on offer for another canine gourmet. There are an estimated 280,000 dogs in Manhattan.
Looking good, girl. All right.
Most of them have pampered lives and can afford to be choosy about the food they eat. But the fussiest dog of them all belongs to Beth Goldberg. Meet Latka.
Oh, my little puppy dog. Yes, you are so sweet. Yes, you are, my doggy boy.
Latka is a professional gourmet.
Are you ready? Are you gonna help me, my little business partner? Today we're gonna test out the peanut butter treats, some veggie treats, yum, 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 and some fruit treats, and Latka looks really, really ready. Latka, we're gonna start with the peanut butter treat, okay? I wanna see if you like this. Oh, he likes that. Next, we're gonna try our veggie treats. They're made with spinach and carrots and garlic and parsley. They're really healthy. They're also wheat-free. And I wanna see how Latka likes these. Come sit. Slow up. You have to sit. Oh, he definitely likes those. Yum, 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 yum. So good. Lastly, we're gonna try a new recipe. These are made with fruit. There's apples and cranberries and blueberries and banana. Okay, lad, come. Come see. I want you to try a fruit treat. Do you like it? Do you want it? No? He doesn't seem interested in it. Latka, no, you don't want this? Good fruit ball? No. If Latka doesn't like it, most dogs probably won't.
And that's why Latka has the best job in the world. He's the official taste tester for his very own line of dog biscuits. Thanks to his refined palate, Latka's treats are meeting with approval from picky pooches not just in New York, but across the country. The Arctic fox can't afford to be so picky. It will make a meal out of almost anything, including feathers and even muskox droppings. However, the fox's elaborate underground smorgasbord can't compete with the preparations made by the most extreme gourmet in the countdown. We've seen the 9 contenders. They're the best of the best. Only one animal puts more effort into creating a culinary masterpiece. Some people love honey, even though they're sucking on nothing more than a big sticky pool of bee vomit. Honey has been called nature's perfect food, and it's taken the world's most extreme gourmets more than 30 million years to perfect the recipe. Flying in to number 1 in the countdown are honeybees. Just collecting the raw materials is hard work. A single bee will visit up to 1,500 flowers every day to find nectar. It stores the sugary fluid inside a second stomach that, when full, weighs almost as much as the bee does. Then it's back to the hive where the process of turning nectar into honey begins. The returning foragers go in search of house bees because they need someone to stick a tongue down their throat. That's because the house bees suck out all the nectar from the forager's stomach. The next step is to throw it back up again. They regurgitate and swallow the sweet liquid up to 50 times. That way, enzymes in their saliva can break down the nectar's complex sugars into simpler forms that are more easily digested by bees. Then, they spit the thin liquid into wax storage cells. Since nectar is almost 80% water, the bees spend hours fanning the honeycomb with their wings to speed up the drying process. Only when the honey is the right consistency will they seal the cell with a plug of wax. And if we didn't come along, this is where the honey would stay until it was needed to feed the hive during the hard times when there are no flowers. 16 kilograms of honey provides enough energy for a small colony to survive the winter. But to make those 16 kilograms of honey, the bees in the hive will have to drink from 70 million flowers and fly a total of over 3 million kilometers. No other animal puts as much effort into preparing its food. Which is why, when it comes to the gourmets of the natural world, the honeybee really is the most extreme.